You were standing in a storm, begging Allah to save the one who was drowning you, but Allah didn't answer by giving them back. He answered by pulling you out. And now, in the quiet after the chaos, your real story begins. 1. Allah didn't let you lose them. He pulled you away to protect you. You didn't lose them. You were removed. Pulled away by a power that loves you more than you ever loved them. By a hand you couldn't see, but your soul felt it. Even before the goodbye was spoken. The ache arrived early. The silence came before the ending. You noticed the small things. The shift in their eyes when you spoke. The way your messages started feeling like echoes. The way your heart began to prepare for an ending. Even while you kept pretending it wasn't happening. You didn't want to believe it. So you held on tighter. You overgave. You overcompensated. You lowered your standards. Not because you were weak, but because you were afraid. Afraid that if they left, maybe it meant something was wrong with you. Afraid that if you let go, no one else would come. Afraid that this, even in its quiet pain, was the only kind of love you'd ever get. But you didn't realize. You were already losing yourself. Piece by piece, smile by smile, prayer by prayer. You tried to stay gentle in a space that was hardening you. You tried to stay soft for someone who stopped feeling you. And you tried to stay hopeful in a bond that had already stopped breathing. And still, you begged Allah for peace. You asked for clarity. You cried in sujood, whispering, "Ya Allah, just fix it." But instead of fixing it, Allah began to peel it away. The more you held on, the more it fell apart. And your heart asked, "Why is Allah letting this happen?" But now, maybe you're finally ready to hear the answer. He let it fall apart, so you wouldn't. Because while you were fighting to keep them, Allah was fighting to keep you. He saw the nights you cried yourself to sleep after pretending everything was okay. He saw how their silence made you question your worth. He saw how every time you forgave them, you abandoned a part of yourself. He saw that you stopped recognizing your own reflection. Because everything you were becoming was shaped around not losing them. So Allah stepped in, not to hurt you, but to save what was left of you. He ended what you were too kind, too scared to walk away from. Because sometimes love makes us blind, and mercy feels like cruelty when it arrives through heartbreak. But what you thought was a breaking was actually a rescue. Because the truth is, you weren't safe in their presence. Not spiritually, not emotionally, not in the way Allah wants your soul to be held. You called it love. But Allah saw what it was really costing you. Your energy, your focus, your salah, your peace, and your light. The light He placed in you was flickering because you kept dimming it just to stay seen. So He removed them, not instantly, not loudly, but with divine precision. He let them slowly fade. He made their heart shift. He created a distance you couldn't bridge, no matter how many times you reached out. And He watched as you tried to fight the exit. As you tried to force a connection that was already closed, as you cried over a door that Allah Himself had locked. But He didn't stop it, because He knew if you stayed one day longer, you would have completely forgotten who you are. So now here you are, alone, confused, wounded, but listen carefully. You are not being punished, you are being returned. Returned to the you who prays with sincerity, the you who feels light inside their chest again, the you who isn't afraid to be alone because they've tasted the sweetness of being chosen by Allah. You didn't lose them, you were saved from a path that would have taken you further from your own soul. And when you look back, months from now, or maybe years, you'll thank Allah for breaking your heart, because that was the only way He could rebuild it right. So don't rush to replace what He removed. Don't chase what was never meant to stay. Don't beg for what Allah rescued you from. Stand still. Let the pain clean you. Let the silence teach you. Let the loneliness introduce you to the version of you that was always there, but buried beneath your need to be loved. This isn't your ending. It's your sacred beginning, and the space they left behind, that's where your light will grow. Because when Allah removes someone, it's never to harm you. It's always to bring you closer to Him. 2. That person was a distraction from who you were becoming. They weren't a mistake, but they were a distraction. Not every person who enters your life is meant to walk with you forever. Some come to teach you, some come to awaken you, and some come to test how much of yourself you're willing to lose, just to feel loved. You didn't realize it at first, how your energy started changing, how your focus on yourself, your growth, your connection with Allah, slowly began to fade into the background. Because all you could think about was them, their mood, their silence, their approval, their reaction. Your day was no longer about peace. It was about managing the tension, reading between the lines, trying to feel safe in a connection that kept making you question who you are. They weren't evil. They weren't sent to destroy you. But they couldn't see the version of you that Allah was preparing, because they weren't meant to witness it. You were trying to grow, but they kept pulling you into smaller shapes. You were trying to elevate, but they kept anchoring you to a version of yourself that no longer fit. You wanted to move forward, but their presence made you shrink, quiet, anxious, unsure, and Allah saw it. He saw you trying to evolve, while still begging to be seen by someone who didn't even understand the new you were becoming. You were becoming more spiritual, more aware, more sensitive to your surroundings, more hungry for truth, for depth, for purpose. But they weren't. And slowly, your energy started getting pulled backwards. You stopped talking about your goals because they didn't care to ask. You stopped dreaming out loud because they looked at you like it didn't matter. You started second-guessing your instincts because they made you feel like too much, and Allah in His mercy intervened, because had you stayed longer, you would have forgotten who you were meant to be. They weren't your enemy. They were a mirror of the version of you that was afraid to rise, the version that still needed permission to be seen, the version that was terrified of walking alone, the version that mistook comfort for purpose, familiarity for faith, attention for love. But Allah was calling you higher. And to answer that call, you had to let go of what kept you small. He didn't let you grow while they were still there, because your next chapter needed room, and they were standing in the middle of the space where your light was supposed to rise. So He began to remove them, gently, then forcefully, then undeniably, until it was just you, alone, confused, half ashamed that you kept praying for something that was only sent to distract you from your real mission. Now you see it, not all at once, but in fragments. You remember who you were before them. You feel the pull to return to your purpose, to rebuild your identity from truth, not approval, to stop shrinking and start glowing. Because now there's silence. And in the silence, you finally hear yourself again, your voice, your soul, your hunger for Allah, your original path. They weren't your forever. They were the pause between your prayers and your purpose, the test before the transformation, the noise before the clarity. You didn't fail by loving them. You would have failed by staying. Now, every step you take alone is not loneliness. It's liberation. You're not behind. You're becoming. You're not heartbroken. You're realigning. You're not less. You're just no longer distracted. And what's coming for you isn't confused, isn't half-present, isn't small. It's full. It's clear. It's aligned with the soul Allah created you to protect. Don't mourn the distraction. Thank Allah for the interruption, because now you finally remember who you were becoming, and nothing will stop that now. 3. You mistook familiarity for love. But it was emotional survival. It wasn't love, but it felt like it, because it was warm sometimes, because it was familiar, because it made the silence in your life go quiet, even if just for a moment. But deep down, you knew you weren't in love with them. You were in love with the way they distracted you from the emptiness inside. You didn't feel safe because they were kind. You felt safe because they were predictable. You knew the pattern, even if it hurt you. You knew how to navigate the silence, the distance, the little games. And it felt easier than being alone with your thoughts, so you called it love. You wrapped it in words like loyalty, patience, and connection. But if you're honest, it was survival. You weren't building something sacred. You were managing emotional pain with borrowed comfort. It wasn't their presence that made you whole. It was the way their presence quieted the storm inside you for a while. You held on, not because it was deep, but because it was available. You didn't stay because it healed you. You stayed because it numbed you, because the idea of starting over was too heavy, because the thought of being alone made your chest ache, because you told yourself, at least I have someone, even if I feel unseen. You became attached to the habit of being halfway loved because it was better than feeling nothing, or so you thought. And you kept praying, not for truth, but for the illusion to work. You asked Allah to fix it, to keep it, to bless it, but you didn't ask Him what it really was, because you already knew. If you asked for clarity, you might have to walk away, and that scared you more than anything, because that connection, even in its confusion, made you feel chosen, not cherished, just chosen. And sometimes we settle for the idea of being chosen when we've forgotten how to choose ourselves. But Allah hadn't forgotten you, so He let it fall apart, because He saw you were clinging to a feeling, not a future. He knew it was delaying your healing, so He gently exposed the truth. And when it began to fade, when their interest dimmed, when their replies slowed, when their presence stopped feeling safe, you were forced to look at the one person you'd been avoiding, yourself. The version of you that kept performing for love, that kept smiling through disappointment, that kept confusing emotional availability with divine alignment. And in that reflection, you realized you weren't actually afraid of losing them. You were afraid of losing what they represented, an escape from your own wounds. But Allah doesn't build elevation on illusions, so He ended it. Not to hurt you, but to make you confront what was never meant to stay buried. Now you know. Now you can't pretend anymore. That wasn't love. That was emotional survival dressed in soft moments and false hope. And you are done surviving, because you've tasted what it's like to live halfway, to be seen but not felt, to be near someone but still feel alone. You were never meant to stay in something that required you to abandon your soul for a little warmth. Now your heart is healing, not through people, but through truth. You've stopped calling distractions your destiny. You've stopped calling pain your price for love. You've stopped calling patterns your personality. You're learning how to be whole, even if it means being alone, because alone with Allah is still better than together with someone who makes you forget Him or forget you. You weren't in love, you were in survival mode, but now you're waking up. And what's coming next will never make you question your worth again. 4. What you called love was actually a delay in your transformation. You kept calling it love. You told yourself, this is what Allah wants for me. This must be part of my qadr. This is the one I've been waiting for. But deep inside, a small voice kept trembling. Something feels off. You ignored that voice. You hushed it with excuses. You buried it under late-night du'as, begging Allah to make it work, when deep down you already knew. It wasn't love, it was a delay. It was a pause in your becoming, a hold placed on your soul's progress, a relationship that kept you so emotionally busy. You forgot you were here for something greater. You were so focused on saving the bond, you stopped saving yourself. You stopped growing, stopped dreaming, stopped evolving. Your heart became occupied with their moods, their silence, their inconsistency. And you forgot how it felt to just be at peace. You lost time, not in the days you spent with them, but in the parts of yourself you stopped nurturing because of them. Because every time you tried to rise, they anchored you. Every time you tried to bloom, they distracted you. And every time you got close to remembering who you are, they reminded you of your fears instead. You thought they were your answer, but they were the exam, a test sent to reveal what you'd tolerate in the name of not being alone, a test to expose how easily you'd press pause on your growth, just to feel chosen. But here's what no one told you. Love doesn't delay your transformation, it deepens it. It doesn't steal your focus from Allah, it draws you closer. It doesn't confuse your mind every night, it brings clarity to your soul. So what you called love was actually your soul begging for comfort, in the arms of someone who was never meant to carry your light, and Allah saw it. He saw your soul slowing down. He saw how the version of you that used to shine was becoming silent, how you stopped talking to him the way you used to, how your prayers became more about fixing the relationship than remembering your Lord. So he did what only a merciful Lord would do. He ended it, not to hurt you, but to give you back to yourself. Because you couldn't transform while you were distracted. You couldn't rise while you were chasing their attention. You couldn't unlock what's next, while holding on to something that kept you stuck in what's already expired. So he removed it, suddenly, painfully, completely, and you cried, not because it was good, but because you had attached your becoming to their presence, because you thought they were part of your destiny, when they were only a delay in disguise. You kept asking, why would Allah let something go that I loved so much? But the better question is, why did you love something that made you forget who you were becoming? The real you, the one that dreams without apology, the one that prays without distraction, the one that doesn't beg for love, but becomes it. Now that they're gone, you're slowly remembering that version. The light is coming back. The silence is starting to feel like peace again. And your reflection no longer feels unfamiliar because the delay has ended. And your transformation is being resumed. This time not as someone waiting for love, but as someone becoming it, with Allah as your witness, and your soul fully present. They were never the destination, just the detour. And now, finally, you're back on the road you were always meant to walk, the one that leads you back to Allah and to the real, awakened, unstoppable you. 5. The pain you feel right now is a sacred cleansing. You're hurting, and you've tried to hide it, tried to stay strong, tried to act like you've moved on, like it didn't matter that much, like your heart didn't shatter the moment they left, or slowly faded while still pretending to care. But behind the silence, behind the smile you show others, you're still bleeding. Some nights it hits you out of nowhere. You're doing fine, and then a small memory crashes into your chest. And suddenly, you're back in the moment where everything started to break. That moment where you realized they're not who you thought they were, and maybe you weren't either. You feel betrayed, not just by them, but by your own heart. You trusted, you loved, you gave, you tried, and still, it wasn't enough to make them stay. It wasn't enough to save what you built in your mind. So now you sit with this ache, this heaviness that doesn't seem to lift. You keep asking, why does it still hurt so much? Why did Allah let me go through this? And here's the answer your heart needs tonight. This pain is not punishment. It's purification. These tears you cry, they are not signs of weakness. They are Allah cleansing your heart from illusions, from attachments, from false hopes that were never meant to carry you. This ache in your chest, it's not the destruction of love. It's the removal of noise, so your soul can finally breathe again. Because what you had wasn't built on truth. It was built on the version of you that was still afraid of being alone, still healing, still learning what love really means. And Allah in His mercy saw that. He saw that you were about to give too much of your soul to someone who couldn't hold it, so He didn't just remove them, He pressed pause on your pattern, because if He didn't intervene, you would have continued pouring into something that was draining you in silence. And now, the pain is here, but not to break you, to cleanse you, to purify the places inside you that were willing to settle, to wash away the desperation, the fear, the self-doubt, to clear out the spiritual toxins that had built up from all the overgiving and pretending. This isn't just sadness. This is surgery, divine surgery. And like all surgery, it hurts. But it's doing something no one else can see. It's repairing your inner world. It's awakening the parts of you that went quiet just to keep the connection alive. It's returning you to the version of you that Allah always intended, the version that prays with a whole heart, that walks with purpose, that no longer begs to be seen. You're being cleaned, inside out. Every cry is an ayah your body couldn't speak. Every ache is a dua your mouth couldn't form. Every silence you sit in now is the space Allah is using to speak back. This is not darkness. This is the moment right before the light. This is the womb of your rebirth. And though it hurts now, one day you'll look back and say, that pain didn't destroy me. It purified me. Because the person who will walk forward from this will be softer, wiser, stronger, and more radiant with Allah's light than ever before. You are not broken. You are being washed. And what's on the other side of this cleansing is a version of you that doesn't chase, but attracts. That doesn't beg, but receives. That doesn't fear love, because they are rooted in the one who never leaves. So tonight, let the tears come. Let the pain rise. Let the memories burn their way out. Because your soul is being cleaned and your heart is being prepared. Not for another person, but for yourself, for your wholeness, for your real life, for the light that was waiting for you all along once the fog cleared. This isn't the end. This is your sacred cleansing. Let it flow. 6. Their absence was the first time you heard Allah clearly. You kept asking for answers, and they never came. You kept praying for signs, but everything felt cloudy. You begged Allah to guide you, to give you clarity, to show you what to do, but you couldn't hear Him. Not because He was silent, but because you were surrounded by noise. Noise in the form of conversations that drained you. Noise in the form of constant overthinking. Noise in the form of chasing someone who wasn't chasing you. Noise in the form of holding on to a connection that had already been spiritually disconnected. And the truth is, you couldn't hear Allah clearly because their presence kept turning down the volume of your soul. You didn't mean to drift away, but you did. You stopped sitting in stillness. You stopped feeling peace in prayer. You stopped opening your heart fully in sujood, because your heart was too occupied. Occupied with worry, with their silence, with your guilt, with the fear that if you let go, you'd be left with nothing. But what you didn't know is, their absence was always the plan, because Allah knew that until they left, you wouldn't return to Him fully, not out of punishment, but out of protection, because Allah is not a background character in your story. He's the author, And the author knows when a chapter must end, even when the character holding the pen isn't ready to stop writing. So he closed it, quietly, painfully, and left you alone, not to destroy you, but to awaken you. And in that silence, something shifted. You sat with your heartbreak one night, and you didn't run from it. You let the ache speak. You let the loneliness echo. You let the grief breathe. And for the first time in weeks, or maybe months, you turned back to Allah with no one in the way. No distractions, no emotional tug-of-war, no half-hearted du'as asking for someone to come back. Just you and him. You didn't say much. You didn't need to. Because sometimes the most powerful prayer is the one where your soul finally collapses in front of the one who's been waiting for you all along. And in that collapse, you heard him, not with your ears, but with your soul. The feeling that washed over you when you cried without needing anyone to comfort you. When you sat on the prayer mat, not asking for love, but for light. When you whispered, "Ya Allah, I don't know who I am anymore," and somehow felt less alone than when you were with them. That was him. That was clarity. Because sometimes clarity doesn't arrive in answers. It arrives in absence. It arrives in the quiet, in the stillness where your heart finally stops performing for someone else, where you stop trying to be enough, where you stop running from the truth, and finally turn toward the one who is truth. That's when the fog lifts. Not all at once, but slowly. Like dawn breaking after a long, dark night. You start to see it. How their absence made space for your presence. How their silence forced you to sit with your soul. How their departure was never about loss, but about divine rearrangement. Allah took them so he could give you back to him. And now, you're beginning to hear him. In the verses that used to feel distant, in the breeze that suddenly feels like a hug, in the peace that flows when you pray, even when your eyes are still swollen from crying. You're hearing what your soul was starved of, reconnection, not with people, but with your Lord. And this time, no one is standing in the way. So let the silence stay for a while. Don't rush to fill it. Don't rush to replace what's gone, because this silence is sacred. It's the sound of Allah calling you back to yourself. It's the space where your next chapter begins, not in noise, not in confusion, but in clarity. Their absence wasn't your ending. It was the beginning of a deeper, purer, stronger relationship with the only one who was never going to leave. Now that you hear him again, you'll never settle for anything that drowns his voice inside you again. 7. What left made room for what's eternal. You thought you lost something important, a person, a connection, a future you imagined in vivid detail. You thought that when they walked away, or when Allah pulled them away, you'd never feel whole again, that you would live with this hole in your heart forever. But what if that hole isn't a hole? What if it's a sacred space, finally empty enough for Allah to fill? Because the truth is, what left you was never meant to carry what's coming. It served its purpose. It triggered your awakening. It revealed your hidden wounds. It taught you what love isn't. And then it was removed, not to leave you hollow, but to prepare a home inside you for something much heavier, much purer, much more permanent. You see, what Allah is preparing for your heart doesn't fit inside a soul that's still cluttered with old stories, half-healed emotions, and people who were never meant to stay. So he emptied it. He removed what you were too attached to, not because you didn't love deeply, but because you didn't yet realize how much your soul was carrying someone else's weight. You were building your life around someone who was never meant to be your foundation, and Allah, in His mercy, tore it down so he could rebuild something higher. And yes, right now it feels like absence, loneliness, silence. But what you're really experiencing is space being made. Space for your light, space for your truth, space for the presence of Allah to settle into your heart, not as a visitor, but as your source. Because what's eternal only comes to hearts that have room. The kind of love that's from Him, not just emotionally satisfying, but spiritually elevating, can't arrive when your soul is already full of noise and confusion. So He took what you clung to. He peeled away what you built your identity around. He broke what was delaying your transformation, so that when the new blessing comes, you'll have space to receive it. You won't sabotage it by holding on to past pain. You won't shrink yourself to keep it. You won't fear losing it, because now you know what's eternal never leaves, because it comes from Him, and maybe, just maybe, the pain you feel isn't from what left. It's from the resistance to accepting what that space was always meant for. Let go. Let the emptiness breathe. Don't rush to fill it. Don't numb it with distractions. Don't run to the next person, the next comfort, the next false peace. Let the divine light arrive naturally. Let it pour in slowly. Let it sit with you, because you're not broken, you're open. And that is where eternity begins. That moment when you stop mourning what left and start welcoming what's finally coming. A connection that doesn't confuse you. A peace that doesn't need convincing. A love that pulls you closer to Allah, not away from Him. A purpose that doesn't rely on being seen, but on being real. This is the preparation, the sacred pause, the heart's purification, and everything that was removed was only standing where that light was meant to shine. So remember this: the emptiness is not a mistake, it is a container for what's eternal. And if you can sit with it long enough, if you can resist the urge to fill it with what's easy, you'll find that what's on its way is worth every tear you cried to make room for it. What left wasn't your future, it was just the obstacle between you and the divine future waiting to enter your life. You didn't lose, you were cleared. Now stay present, because what's coming will never need to be forced. It will feel like coming home. 8. This isn't the end. This is your sacred unfolding. You think this is the end, that you've lost too much, that you've been through too many storms, that you're too tired to rebuild, too broken to begin again, too forgotten to matter. You look at the silence around you, and it feels like abandonment. But let me tell you the truth your heart is aching to hear. This is not the end. This is the beginning of your sacred unfolding, because what you're standing in right now isn't a grave. It's a womb. You are not buried. You are being planted. And what looks like darkness, what feels like isolation, heartbreak, and loss, is actually the soil where your next chapter is taking root. It hurts now. Yes. It's confusing. Yes. But you are not finished. You are only starting to emerge. The shaking you feel in your chest, that's not weakness. That's your soul stretching. That's your old self shedding. That's your real self, the one Allah created with divine purpose, waking up. You're unfolding, slowly, quietly, painfully, and beautifully. No one may see it yet. No one may understand what's happening inside you. They may look at your silence and think you've given up. But Allah knows. He sees the way your heart still whispers His name, even in exhaustion. He sees the way your soul still reaches for Him, even when you don't know what to say. He sees how much you've endured, how many tears you've hidden, how many nights you've spent just trying to make sense of the pain. And He's not finished with you. He's not done writing your story, because what you're becoming can't be rushed. It can't be born in front of people who couldn't handle your transformation. It can't be revealed until everything false, everything temporary, everything that kept you small has been stripped away. That's what this chapter is. Not destruction, not delay, not punishment, but preparation. You are being refined. You are being emptied, not because you're forgotten, but because Allah is clearing space for a version of you that will rise with such clarity, such depth, such presence, that even you won't recognize yourself. And when you do, when you finally meet the person you're becoming, you'll realize every heartbreak was part of the blueprint. Every silence was a sacred pause. Every delay was divine timing. Every no was protection. Every loss was a return to what's real, a return to your soul, a return to the one who never left your side, even when everyone else did. This is your sacred unfolding. You were never meant to stay in the pain. You were meant to rise through it. You were never meant to end here. You were meant to begin again, stronger, softer, wiser, rooted in Allah. So let this moment be what it is, not your breakdown, but your breakthrough. You are not behind, you are not less, you are not ruined. You are becoming, and the world hasn't seen your final form yet. So breathe, not because it's all okay, but because Allah is still writing, still shaping, still unfolding your soul in ways no eye has seen, no ear has heard, and no heart could fully understand. You are not forgotten. You are being revealed, and when Allah reveals you, no one can block it. No one can deny it. No one can stop what He has commanded into existence. This isn't your ending. This ... is your rebirth. So breathe. Your heart is not broken. It's being rewritten. Your story is not over. It's just been purified of the wrong characters. And your soul? It's finally ready to rise. Undistracted, unapologetic, unstoppable. Because what Allah has written for you can never be blocked by the ones He removed. You weren't left behind. You were withheld because the world you thought you were ready for wasn't ready for you. Allah doesn't reveal His masterpieces in crowded rooms. He reveals them in divine silence. And when your moment comes, it won't feel like a beginning. It'll feel like destiny catching up. 1. You weren't supposed to be seen yet. You keep asking yourself, why can't they see me? Why does it feel like I'm invisible, like I don't matter, like I'm slowly fading into the background of everyone's life? You show up, you try to smile, you try to be present, but it's like the world looks right through you. You feel forgotten. You feel like you're falling behind while everyone else is being celebrated. You wonder if you're doing something wrong, if maybe you're just not special enough, not talented enough, not loved enough. But please listen closely. You weren't supposed to be seen yet. Not like this. Not while you're still learning how to breathe after the storm. Not while your soul is still tender. Not while your heart is still healing from being cracked open in silence. Allah doesn't expose what He's still shaping. He doesn't display what isn't finished. And right now, you are in His hands. You're in the middle of being made. You're in the middle of a sacred transformation that no one else can see, because it wasn't meant for them. If people had seen you now, they would have misunderstood everything. They would have labeled your stillness as weakness. They would have called your quiet growth failure. They would have pointed to your loneliness and said, look, even God left them. But they would have been wrong. So wrong. Because the truth is, this is the most loved you've ever been. This is the closest you've ever been to your Lord. And this invisibility, it isn't punishment, it's protection. Allah covered you. He gently placed a veil over your process. He blocked the attention. He delayed the applause. He paused the progress you thought you wanted, because what's being formed inside you is too valuable to be exposed too early. You're not just healing, you're being reborn. And rebirth is messy, it's raw, It's sacred. It requires silence, not spotlights. You wanted people to clap for your growth, but Allah wanted you to grow so deeply that even you wouldn't recognize who you used to be. He wanted you to know what it feels like to rise, without validation, to walk, without needing to be followed, to grow, without performing for anyone's approval. That kind of strength can't be built in public. It has to be born in isolation. It has to be shaped in rooms where only Allah is watching. And maybe that's why you feel like no one sees you. Because you're not meant to be seen yet. You're not meant to be understood yet. Because the version of you that's coming isn't the one they used to know. She's wiser, she's softer, she's braver, she's real. And when it's time, when the stitching is done, when the healing has settled, when your soul is strong enough to carry the light without apology, Allah will lift the curtain, not for their approval, but for His purpose. You won't need to prove yourself. You won't need to explain your silence. You won't need to rush your unveiling, because what Allah hides in secret, He reveals in beauty. And when you're finally seen, they'll realize you were never invisible. You were simply becoming unforgettable. So rest, breathe, trust the hiddenness. Because the version of you that's being born right now isn't meant to arrive in front of people. She's meant to arrive in front of Him, and when she does, the whole world will see what only Allah knew was growing all along. 2. Your loneliness was a language, and Allah was the only one who understood it. You've been feeling it for a while now, that ache, that silence that wraps around your chest at night, that feeling of being surrounded by people, but somehow still completely alone. You scroll through your phone, you check your messages, you wait for someone to ask how you're doing, but the screen stays quiet. Your heart stays heavy, and you whisper to yourself, "Why am I always the one left behind? Why do I care so deeply, but feel forgotten so easily?" You try to pretend you're okay, you smile in public, but behind closed doors, your soul is whispering things even you don't know how to explain. Let me tell you something you were never told, that emptiness inside you. It's not meaningless, it's not weakness, it's not punishment. It's a language, a spiritual language, one that doesn't use words, one that most people around you can't hear, but Allah does. Your loneliness was never silent to Him. It was loud, it was deep, it was sacred. It was your soul crying out in a voice only its Creator could understand. You didn't even know how to say what you were feeling, but Allah already heard it, before it turned into tears, before it became heavy in your chest, before it broke your sleep. He heard the exact sound your heart was making when it said, "I just want to be held. I just want to feel safe. I just want to stop breaking in places no one can see." You kept thinking your loneliness meant something was wrong with you. But maybe your loneliness was a bridge, a pull, a divine invitation to finally come back to the one who never left. Because sometimes Allah removes the noise so you can finally hear your own soul speak. Sometimes He clears the room, not to leave you in pain, but to finally give you space to notice His presence. Because the truth is, when everyone else stopped checking on you, He didn't. When no one saw the weight you were carrying, He did. When no one responded to the cry in your silence, He already had the answer prepared. This is why your heart couldn't find comfort in people anymore, why their words felt shallow, why their presence felt far, even when they were close. Because your soul wasn't reaching for a person, it was reaching for God. And He's been responding, not always with noise, but with stillness, with peace, with subtle signs that only the eyes of a lonely heart could recognize. That moment when you randomly felt calm out of nowhere, that was Him, That verse that hit differently at 2 a.m., that was him. That quiet strength that showed up when you thought you'd fall apart, that was him. You thought loneliness was breaking you, but it was actually translating your pain into a language that heaven understood. It was proof that even when you had no one, you still had access to the one who owns hearts, the one who listens even when you don't speak, the one who doesn't need an explanation to show mercy, so the next time it hurts. When the silence feels too loud, when the emptiness makes you wonder if you're forgotten, remember this: your loneliness is not empty space. It's sacred ground. It's where Allah comes closest. It's where you stop performing and He starts revealing. Because in that pain, He's teaching you how to be known without ever needing to be seen. And one day, when you look back, you'll realize that it was in your loneliest moments where Allah loved you the loudest. 3. Their silence was permission, not abandonment. They used to call, they used to check on you, they used to be there, at least a little. But now, silence, nothing. Conversations faded, plans got cancelled, messages were left on read, and you sat there wondering, what did I do wrong? Why are they pulling away? Why does everyone leave when I need them the most? You started blaming yourself. Maybe you were too much. Maybe you were too quiet. Maybe you weren't good enough to keep around. But child, what if I told you their silence wasn't your fault? What if I told you their absence wasn't a rejection? It was a release, a permission slip from the heavens that said, you don't need them to become who you were meant to be. You were waiting for an apology. But Allah gave you clarity. You were waiting for closure, but Allah gave you distance instead. Because closure isn't always found in someone's explanation. Sometimes it's found in Allah's protection. They stopped showing up not because you were worthless, but because they were no longer written in your becoming. They were part of your past, not your prophecy. You kept trying to carry everyone with you, but some people were only meant to walk with you until a certain mile. They weren't built to breathe in the altitude of who you're becoming. And so, Allah let their hands slip. He let their calls fade. He let their energy disappear from your life. Not to hurt you, but to free you from needing their permission to grow. You don't need to be understood by people who can't even hear their own soul. You don't need to keep explaining your heart to people who only listen to respond, never to understand. You don't need to keep chasing those who were only meant to witness your breakdown, not your rebirth. Their silence was permission. Permission to stop performing, permission to stop proving, permission to finally build something real without asking them to clap. Because let's be honest, if they had stayed, you would have kept shrinking. You would have kept bending your truth to make them comfortable. You would have kept editing yourself just to avoid being alone. But Allah wanted you whole, not half-loved. He wanted you free, not tolerated. He wanted you to finally realize you were enough without them. So He made their silence loud. Loud enough that you had no choice but to turn inward, to look up, to finally ask, Ya Allah, who am I without them? And that's when the real healing started. Because when people stop speaking, Allah speaks louder. When they fall silent, He fills the space with signs. When they stop choosing you, He starts revealing you. So don't mistake their absence as evidence that you're unloved. It's evidence that you're evolving, and not everyone is allowed to see who you're becoming. Some doors don't close because you're forgotten. They close because you're being chosen. And chosen ones, they're often pulled away first. Not to be punished, but to be prepared. 4. You were being disarmed, so you could finally rise without defending yourself. You've been strong for too long. You've carried yourself through storms no one even knew about. You've smiled through chaos. You've been the calm in everyone else's crisis, while hiding the war going on inside you. And slowly, without even realizing it, you became your own armor. You learned how to guard your heart, how to keep your distance, how to expect the worst before it could hurt you. You said, "I'm fine," too many times, until even you started to believe it. You forgot what it felt like to just be, to breathe without fear, to exist without a wall around your soul. But then something happened. You started breaking. Not all at once, but little by little. Your confidence cracked, your energy faded, your defenses stopped working, and you began to feel things you had locked away for years. Sadness, fear, loneliness, need. At first, it scared you. You thought you were falling apart, but you weren't falling apart. You were being disarmed. Allah was removing everything you used to protect yourself, not to expose you, but to free you, because the armor that once kept you safe is now keeping you stuck. You built those walls to survive, but now they're blocking your healing. You learned to fight for love, but now you need to receive it. You learned to expect betrayal, but now you need to trust, at least in Allah's plan. You learned to stay silent, but now He wants your heart to speak again, and so He started peeling it all off. The pride, the defense mechanisms, the old stories you kept repeating in your head just to feel in control. Yes, it hurts, because losing your armor feels like losing your identity, but maybe that identity was built in pain, not in truth. Maybe you've only known yourself as the strong one because you never had the chance to feel safe enough to be soft. But Allah is rewriting that now. He's reminding you that strength isn't in how much you hide. It's in how honest you can be with Him. It's in how willing you are to say, "Ya Allah, I don't want to fight anymore. I just want to feel again." You were being disarmed, not to break you, but to restore you. So you can rise again without having to prove anything. So you can walk into your next chapter without carrying the pain of your last one. So you can finally sit in rooms where you don't have to shrink just to be accepted. You're not weak because you're tired of being strong. You're not broken because you're finally feeling everything you buried. You're just becoming real. You're just becoming free. And when Allah is the one who disarms you, He never leaves you exposed. He covers you in His mercy. He surrounds you with protection you don't even see. And when you rise again, you'll rise with peace, with softness that doesn't make you fragile, but holy, with strength that doesn't need to defend, because it's anchored in trust. You won't have to explain yourself anymore. You won't have to fight to be understood, because the version of you Allah is building now won't need armor. She will carry something stronger. She will carry divine permission to be whole. 5. Invisibility was your protection, not your curse. You kept looking around, wondering why no one noticed, why no one picked you, why they didn't respond to your efforts, your care, your existence. You were present, but somehow invisible. You smiled, but no one asked if it was real. You gave your all, but it was never enough to be remembered, and it started eating at you slowly. You began to ask questions that burned your chest. What am I doing wrong? Why does it feel like the world sees everyone else but me? Why am I always the one left behind, while others get chosen, seen, celebrated? You tried harder. You made yourself smaller in some places, louder in others. You adapted. You bent. You became versions of yourself that weren't even real, just to be noticed. But still, you felt invisible. And here's the truth that no one told you. Your invisibility wasn't your curse. It was your protection. It was Allah wrapping a veil around you, because the eyes you were trying to impress were not meant to witness your becoming. If they had seen you too soon, they would have misjudged you. They would have called your sacred stillness wasted time. They would have clapped for your surface while ignoring your soul. Some people only know how to celebrate what they can use, and Allah loved you too much to let your worth be tied to their attention. So He hid you, not because you were forgettable, but because you were formless, still being shaped, still being designed in the quiet of divine hands. You weren't ready to be seen, not because you lacked something, but because what you carried was too holy to be exposed too soon. You thought being overlooked meant you weren't good enough. But sometimes, Allah hides His favorites. He shields them in silence. He lets them grow in the dark, away from shallow praise, away from performance, away from the pressure to be something before you truly are. You were hidden, not to be forgotten, but to be preserved, to be held away from eyes that only understand surface-level stories, to be protected from voices that would have spoken over your destiny without knowing what Allah was about to write. Some lights aren't made for crowds, they're made for impact. And impact needs depth, it needs patience, it needs silence. So while others were seen early, you were being saved for something later, something greater, something they'll never see coming. And when that moment comes, when Allah finally reveals what He's been building in you, you won't rise out of nowhere. You'll rise from everywhere you were once invisible. You'll rise with dignity, with silence behind you and purpose in front of you. You won't need to shout. You won't need to compete. You won't need to ask, "Can you see me now?" Because when Allah says now, everything that ignored you will have no choice but to notice. So if you still feel invisible today, don't rush. Don't beg to be seen. Stay hidden. Stay planted. Stay close to the one who sees everything, without you needing to perform, because invisibility in this world might just mean you were being seen first by the one who matters most. 6. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to be rebuilt. You tried. You really did. You tried to fit in, to blend in, to be like them, to think like them, to talk like them, to move like them, to be someone they would finally accept. You watered yourself down. You edited your soul. You shrunk your voice so they could feel louder. You hid your depth dash so they wouldn't call you too much. You ignored your own instincts just to stay part of a circle that never really saw you. And still, you felt like a stranger. You could be in a room full of people and still feel like your spirit was standing alone in the corner. You kept thinking, if I just try harder, they'll get me. If I just stay quiet, they'll let me stay. If I just keep smiling, maybe they'll finally accept me. But child, you were never supposed to fit in, because what they wanted you to become was a version of yourself that Allah never wrote for you. You kept trying to belong in spaces that couldn't hold your soul. You kept trying to be enough for people who were never assigned to witness your realness. You kept trying to earn love in places Allah was calling you to leave. And now you feel tired, tired of bending, tired of pretending, tired of giving your softness to spaces that only understand surfaces. But that tiredness, it's not depression, it's not failure, it's not you falling apart, it's your soul rebelling against everything that isn't you anymore. You were never made to blend in. You were made to break free, to unlearn, to unbecome, to be rebuilt, piece by divine piece, in the hands of the one who knew your name, before you ever lost yourself trying to please people. Allah didn't let you fit in because He was protecting your originality, because He designed your heart for something higher, something louder in spirit but softer in ego, something bigger than applause and deeper than fitting a mold. You weren't meant to fit in the room. You were meant to rebuild the room, to walk in with your quiet truth and change the atmosphere with nothing but presence. But first, You had to be torn down, not by people, but by truth, by silence, by divine discomfort. You had to outgrow your surroundings, so he made the old spaces feel small. He made the conversations feel fake. He made the friendships feel shallow, not to punish you, but to pull you out. Because the version of you he's building now doesn't just want peace, it requires it. It doesn't just seek purpose, it breathes it. And anything that tries to make you feel like you're too much was never meant to stay. So stop asking why you never felt like you belonged. You weren't broken, you were becoming. And becoming doesn't happen in rooms that expect you to stay small. Becoming happens in the wilderness, in the silence, in the isolation where Allah says, "Let me rebuild you without their hands all over you." And when the building is done, you won't just be someone who found peace. You'll be someone who finally came home to themselves and never asked for permission again. 7. You're not delayed. You're being made undeniable. You see them, don't you? Everyone seems to be moving, progressing, winning, being seen, being chosen, being celebrated. And then there's you, still waiting, still hidden, still stuck between "I'm trying" and "what's the point?" You keep telling yourself to stay patient, but your chest feels heavier by the day. You smile for others and cry in places no one can see. You pretend like you're fine, but you're quietly asking Allah, "When is it my turn? Why do I feel so behind? What am I doing wrong?" But beloved, you're not behind. You're not delayed. You're not being punished. You're being prepared, and not just for anything. You're being prepared for something so real, so heavy, so divine, that if it came too soon, it would have crushed you under its weight. See, fast success isn't always true success. Early visibility doesn't always mean real purpose. Sometimes Allah slows you down because He loves you too much to let you build something that can't survive the storm. What He's doing in you takes depth, takes process, takes private pressure that no one else sees, because the thing about greatness is that it never grows in public first. It grows in silence, in long nights where you question everything, in quiet days where nothing makes sense, in prayers that don't get answered right away. Not because He doesn't hear you, but because He's still writing the answer into you. You wanted speed, but Allah is giving you substance. You wanted now, but He's giving you forever. He's delaying your spotlight, so your light can't be dimmed by people who only love you when you're useful. He's delaying your arrival, so that when you finally show up, no one can deny what you carry, because it won't be personality, it won't be talent, it will be divine weight, the kind that speaks even when you say nothing, the kind that's felt before it's seen. You don't want a moment. You want impact, and impact takes longer because it requires Allah to strip everything in you that's still dependent on applause. It requires Him to silence the parts of you that still seek permission to shine. It requires a crushing of ego and the building of a soul that stands even when no one claps. So no, you're not delayed. You're being made undeniable. So when He releases you, no one can question what He's done in you. No one can take credit for your growth. No one can manipulate your self-worth, because they didn't see the nights you begged for peace. They didn't hear the silent sobs in sujood. They didn't witness the days you kept going with no reward in sight. But Allah did. And He's the one writing your name in places your feet haven't touched yet. He's the one scheduling your arrival. For a moment that won't need an announcement, because what's meant can never miss you. So breathe. Stop measuring your life by their timeline. Stop rushing what Allah is taking His time to perfect. He's not just building your success, He's building you. And when He's done, you won't be the one chasing your moment. The moment will search for you, because you weren't built to be fast. You were built to be undeniable. 8. They can't walk with the version of you that's coming. You keep looking back, hoping they'll return, hoping they'll finally understand who you're becoming, hoping the connection can be revived because you once loved them deeply, you once shared everything, and letting go still feels like losing a part of yourself. They knew the old you, the soft you, the version that said yes too quickly and questioned your own worth too slowly. They laughed with you, cried with you, grew with you, but they also held your past like it was your ceiling. And now, as Allah is slowly rewriting you from the inside out, you can feel it, can't you? That quiet distance, that uncomfortable silence, that spiritual gap between who you were and who you're becoming. And it hurts, because your heart is loyal. You wanted to take them with you. You wanted them to see the new light Allah is awakening in you. You wanted to say, look, I'm still me, just deeper now. But no matter how much you explain, they don't seem to hear it. They don't feel it. And some of them, they don't even care. That's when it stings. But that's also when Allah begins to whisper something painful and necessary. They can't walk with the version of you that's coming. Not because you're better, not because they're evil, but because the soul you're stepping into requires a level of purity, presence, and spiritual truth that some hearts are simply not ready to hold. See, they were meant to be in your story, just not in the ending. They were assigned to your breaking, not your rising. They were perfect for the storm that cracked you open, but not for the sunlight you're learning to stand in now. And if they stayed, you would have stayed smaller. You would have kept editing yourself to be digestible. You would have delayed your own becoming just to keep the peace. But Allah didn't create you to stay attached to what's safe. He created you to transform. And transformation requires space. Space to let go of what no longer reflects where you're going. Some people only knew how to love your wounds, not your wisdom. They loved you when you were broken, needy, uncertain, because it made them feel strong, important, close. But now that you're starting to choose peace over people, silence over noise, Allah over approval, you're too unfamiliar for them. They miss the old you, the one who kept shrinking just to keep them close. But that version of you had to die, so the one Allah wrote in your soul could live. And maybe that's the hardest part of healing, realizing that some of the people you love the most can't go with you, not because they hate you, but because they're still attached to a version of you that no longer exists. So Allah, in His mercy, lets them fade. He lets the bond stretch, the calls slow down, the energy dissolve, not to punish you, but to protect what's next. Because what's coming isn't just a new chapter. It's a new identity, one that doesn't just survive, but leads. One that doesn't beg to be chosen, but walks with God, whether seen or not. One that's rooted in obedience, not validation. Depth, not performance. Purpose, not popularity. And not everyone has the spiritual stamina to walk beside that. Not everyone can handle the silence that surrounds the soul when it's aligned with heaven. Not everyone can carry what Allah is about to place on your shoulders. So let them go, without guilt, without chasing, without over-explaining. Let the old room echo with your absence, because your presence is being redirected to a space where you'll be honored, not drained. Where you'll be chosen by alignment, not convenience. The version of you that's coming, she's too precious to be explained to people who only knew your past. She's too holy to be carried by hands that still live in the temporary. So walk forward now, even if it means walking alone. Because the ones who are meant to walk with the new you, they're not behind you, they're ahead. And Allah is preparing them too. You weren't hidden because you were weak. You were hidden because you were holy. The silence wasn't a delay. It was a divine delivery room. And now, Heaven is getting ready to unveil what earth couldn't handle yet. So stay patient, stay quiet, stay unseen, because the version of you Allah wants to reveal can't be born in front of people, only in front of Him.